In this video, I'm going to go through the perfect crosshair settings for every hero. To start, the default crosshair within Overwatch is actually super inefficient. For example, on heroes like Reaper, it uses this horrible circle shape to represent weapon spread. This shape is super inaccurate as it's almost impossible to center targets easily in this super wide range. Not only is this hard to use, on heroes like Soldier, it's also super distracting and takes up a large part of your screen. And sometimes it's even just confusing. Like, what is even happening with this Hanzo crosshair? What do these lines even mean? Although my main gripe with the default crosshairs is that they're white. As discussed in my previous video, this white crosshair easily gets lost against lighter backgrounds, making it almost impossible to line up correctly. So that's where we'll start. The most important crosshair setting I recommend changing for every hero is the color. The outstanding number one choice for this is the light green, as it's super easily identifiable among most colors. If you can't bear to stare into this color though, I would also recommend the dark blue, yellow, and pink options as well. Now that we've established crosshair color, let's discuss the crosshair setup that we want to use. This setup is what I recommend using for every hero, except a few that I'll discuss later in this video. The primary function of a crosshair is to allow you to quickly line up enemies with the center of your weapon. This is where I would recommend the crosshair style. In most video games and even most real weapon scopes, the two-lined crosshair style is the most commonly used. This is because it allows your eyes to quickly detect the center of the scope and more seamlessly align this with an enemy. The most common counter-argument I hear to this is the dot scope, but the dot scope is often harder for your eyes to quickly find in the middle of a fight, especially if you're looking around for your health bar or up into the kill feed regularly. I also recommend turning off show accuracy, as this will alter your crosshair sizing depending on some in-game factors such as weapon spread, which is something you can just learn by playing your hero enough. Now that we've selected our crosshair style, let's talk about the confusing slider settings down here. I use a 2 thickness on my crosshair, as you want to keep this as low as possible to not be a distraction, but also not low enough to where it's difficult for your eyes to find. For crosshair length I use a 10, and for center gap I use an 8, as you want these to be as low as possible for your eyes to easily find the center, but not too small that they're difficult to navigate to. For opacity, I use a 100, as you want your crosshair to stand out as much as possible, and putting this any lower will begin to blend your crosshair in with the background. Next up, I set my outline opacity to 0, since this gives a black outline around the crosshair, which is intended to help the crosshair stand out more. But since we're using the standout green with 100% opacity, the outline is not necessary and ends up being kinda distracting. And for dot opacity, I use a 0%, since we don't want to use a dot on our crosshair as we discussed earlier. However, there are some heroes that I find work better with a dot sight, these being the scoped in snipers. For Ashe, Widow, and Ana, I actually do use a dot sight on them. This is because when you're scoped in, you won't be looking around for your health bar or the kill feed as often, so you don't have to find it like a normal crosshair and will more often keep your eyes on the crosshair itself. This allows you to use a dot sight that you can regularly practice lining up onto heroes' heads. For this, you want your dot size to be as low as possible so it isn't a distraction on your screen, but large enough to line up with heads consistently. For this, I recommend anywhere between a size 2 and a size 6. I personally use the 6, but if you find this too large and distracting, feel free to go lower down. And finally, I recommend keeping dot opacity at 100, as again, this helps the crosshair to stand out more and not blend in with the background. The rest of the settings in this menu don't actually apply to the dot scope. For this reason, I set up my crosshair settings using the crosshair style as my default on all heroes, then I come in and change Ashe, Widow, and Ana individually with these 2 settings for the dot scope. There are also a couple of heroes that I have a few custom settings for. On the default crosshair, I recommended turning show accuracy off. However, for heroes that have charged shots, I actually keep this show accuracy option turned on. This now allows you to see when you're at maximum charge and will deal maximum damage. The 3 heroes that have a charge shot are Winston, Hanzo, and Symmetra. However, I actually keep this one off for Symmetra as it alters the crosshair for a primary fire as well, making it super difficult to use. But with Hanzo and Winston specifically, it doesn't make too much of a difference, so I turn show accuracy on. If this guide helped you out at all, feel free to leave a subscription on the channel and let me know how you get on with my settings in the comments down below. Apart from that, I'll see you in Ilios.